Before you pass judgment on me, let me tell you how it all began. On my 66th birthday, I thought my son was taking me out for lunch. I had on my nicest sweater, combed my silver hair just right, even polished my shoes. I expected cake, laughter, a little nostalgia. What I got instead was a packed suitcase and silence. That day was only the beginning. If you believe betrayal comes only from outsiders, wait until it comes from your own blood. They say a father's love is supposed to be unwavering, patient, loyal, protective. I lived by that creed. Every scraped elbow, every science fair, every heartbreak, my son Marcus had me at his side. I raised him alone after my wife passed away when he was 10. I did my best. Worked double shifts as a machinist. Skipped meals so he could eat. Missed promotions to make it to his basketball games. I never asked for anything in return. That morning, I woke up in my quiet little home in Columbus, Ohio. Alone, but optimistic. Marcus hadn't visited in weeks. He claimed work was hectic. Things with his wife weren't great. But I still had hope. Hope that today, of all days, he'd show up. I made breakfast. Pancakes, his favorite. I even set out 2 plates. By noon, the food had gone cold, and so had my heart. Still, I didn't let it crush me. I checked my phone at least 20 times, scrolled through old texts just to feel something. At 3:00 p.m., the doorbell rang. There he stood, grinning like the boy I used to carry on my shoulders. "Happy birthday, Dad," he said, holding a small plastic-wrapped bouquet from the grocery store. I hugged him anyway. "You came?" I asked. "Of course," he replied, barely returning the hug. "Get your coat. I've made reservations." I didn't question it. I slipped on my nicest shoes, grabbed my wallet, and followed him outside with a foolish grin on my face. But we didn't drive to any restaurant. We drove out past the city, toward a long road lined with maple trees that had turned to gold and rust. When we pulled into the driveway, my chest tightened. The sign read, Crescent Valley Assisted Living Center. "Marcus, what is this?" He didn't look at me. "We need to talk. You've been forgetting things. You live alone, it's not safe anymore." "What memory problems?" I snapped. "I found this place, it's clean, quiet. You'll be with people your age." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You brought me here on my birthday?" He got out and popped the trunk. My suitcase was already packed. "You went through my things?" He sighed. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Inside, it smelled like antiseptic and boiled vegetables. Receptionists smiled at me like I was some lost child. Marcus handed over a stack of paperwork. Power of attorney. My signature. His. It was done. I didn't cry, not yet. They led me to a room with beige walls, a stiff bed, and a small window that stared into a brick wall. I sat on the edge of that bed with my coat still on. No cake, no candles, just the low hum of fluorescent lights and the echo of nurses down the hallway. Hours passed. I unwrapped the bouquet. The flowers were already wilting. I lay awake that night, the smell of bleach in the sheets, listening to the drone of a distant television, thinking about every sacrifice I'd made for him. I remembered every loan I gave without question, every favor, every time I ignored my own needs to make room for his. But something broke inside me that night. A switch flipped, and I realized I was no longer here to be cared for. I was being hidden, and I was not going to be erased. The next morning, I asked the nurse if I could use my cell phone. "Oh, your son already took care of that," she said with a rehearsed smile. "He said it was confusing for you." That was when it hit me. I wasn't here for care. I was here for containment. But I wasn't as fragile as they thought. Not even close. I stopped eating for 2 days. Not to make a statement, but because I couldn't keep the food, or the truth, down. It's strange how quickly your sense of worth evaporates when the people you love treat you like you're disposable. I wasn't a man anymore. I was a patient file, a room number, someone to be monitored and managed. The nurses were mostly kind, but kindness laced with pity only deepens the wound. They called me sweetheart, like I was a toddler or a man on his last breath. No one asked what I used to do. No one cared that I built homes, fixed cars, taught my son how to ride a bike. To them, I was just another old man in slippers and silence. My roommate, Howard, slept all day and snored through the night. When he did speak, it was about his daughters, none of whom had visited in years. I listened because I knew that ache too well. I kept trying to stay sharp. I read the newspaper in the lounge, worked every crossword I could find. I even reread an old crime novel just to keep my mind moving. But I was sinking. Deeper. Darker. And then, on the 4th day, I met her. Jasmine. She wasn't supposed to be there. A nurse had called in sick, and Jasmine filled in. Young, sharp eyes, dark braids tucked under her cap, and something rare. Sincerity. She was checking my vitals when she paused and said, "You don't seem like you belong here." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She smiled gently. "I've been here a while. Some people need this place, and that's okay. But you're different. You're not lost." My throat tightened. For the first time in days, I felt seen. Later that afternoon, she came back to my room holding something discreetly in her hand. "This belonged to Mr. Garrison. He passed away last week. We found it in his Bible. No one came to claim it. It was a folded lottery ticket, yellowed and 2 weeks old." I chuckled bitterly. "You want me to try my luck?" She winked. "Maybe the world owes you one." I didn't plan to check it. It felt silly. But boredom and desperation, they make strange bedfellows. That night, I waited until the hallway was quiet. I shuffled to the community room, logged onto one of their ancient desktops, and typed in the numbers. My hand froze. My heart did too. $7 million. I stared at the screen. Refreshed it. Again. Again. I covered my mouth with both hands. I looked around. Empty. But what I felt wasn't joy. It was fear. If Marcus ever found out, if anyone found out. I printed the confirmation, folded it small, and slipped it into my sock. The next day, I pulled Jasmine aside. "I need to speak to someone. Privately. Someone legal." She didn't ask why, she just nodded. She knew a guy, Elias, a volunteer attorney who came in twice a month to help residents with estate matters. I waited for him like my life depended on it. Because it did. He showed up that Friday. Young, focused, quietly powerful. We met in a janitor's closet. I handed him the printout and whispered, "Can you help me disappear?" He raised his brows, but didn't hesitate. Then we moved fast. What followed was a blur. Paperwork, notaries, new phone, temporary mailing address. Elias connected me with an independent advisor who created a blind trust. The money would be untouchable by Marcus. I wrote a new will, leaving everything to anonymous charities. No names, no trails. Jasmine hugged me the night before I left. "Don't forget us," she whispered. "I won't," I said, and I didn't. Before the sun rose, I walked out of Crescent Valley wearing clothes that weren't mine, carrying a worn duffel with nothing but essentials, and the lottery ticket hidden deep in a fireproof pouch. They thought they'd buried me. They had no idea I was about to rise. The bus ride out of Ohio was long, silent, and cold. I sat near the back, hoodie up, sunglasses on, clutching my duffel like it held my soul. In many ways, it did. I didn't know where I was headed, just that it had to be far, far enough that Marcus couldn't find me, far enough that I could rebuild without his shadow hovering over me. Elias had found a modest house under the trust's name in rural Tennessee. Off the grid, livable, quiet, no cameras, no curious neighbors, just space and silence. When we crossed the Kentucky border, I exhaled for the first time in hours. Freedom didn't taste sweet. It tasted like rust and adrenaline, like blood and survival. The house was nothing special. One story, faded red bricks, a crooked porch railing, a dented mailbox. But it had heat, water, and no Marcus. And the silence? It wasn't the sterile silence of a nursing home. It was real. It let you think, breathe, heal. In the days that followed, I moved like a shadow, cooked basic meals, sat on the porch with an old quilt draped over my shoulders, watched the wind blow dry leaves across the yard. Every hour I checked the news, expecting headlines. Missing man wins lottery. Son pleads confusion. But there was nothing. Not yet. The ticket went into a fireproof box under the floorboards, alongside my new will, a burner phone, and a letter marked, "In case something happens." A week after I left Crescent Valley, there was a knock at the door. I froze. I hadn't told a soul where I was. No bank account, no cards, no online trace. I tiptoed to the window. A grocery delivery. Just as Elias had arranged. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. That afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I created a fake Facebook profile and searched for Marcus. There he was, grinning in his profile photo, looking like he hadn't destroyed my life. His latest post? "If anyone has seen my father, Thomas Reed, please contact me or Columbus Police. We're worried about his safety." Hundreds of comments. "Praying for you. You're such a good son. He's lucky to have you." I laughed so hard I cried. They had no clue. But what truly gutted me wasn't the post. It was the photo he used. It wasn't recent. It was from 5 years ago. My 61st birthday. We were laughing. He had his arm around me. I was holding a slice of cake. We looked happy. It's easy to perform love in a picture. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the fireplace, mind spinning. I remembered every favor I did for Marcus, every loan, every vague financial excuse. The way he'd say things like, "You're forgetting again, Dad," or, "We already talked about this," when we hadn't. I thought I was losing my memory. But no. He was gaslighting me. He wanted me to question myself so that when he took everything, I wouldn't fight. The next morning, I called Elias from a burner line. "I want to update my will again," I said. He didn't ask why. "What changes?" "I want it spelled out. Marcus Reed receives nothing, not a penny, not a photo, nothing." "Done," he said. "You're safe now, Thomas." But I wasn't, because I knew something was coming, and I had to be ready. It started with an envelope. Plain, no return address, hidden among junk mail and utility bills. I almost missed it. But the paper, thicker than usual, caught my attention. Expensive. Inside was a single sheet, a scanned document, my signature, or what looked like it. Below it, 2 more signatures, one from my late wife, Clara, and one from Marcus. A loan agreement, dated 12 years ago. A 5-figure personal loan, supposedly taken out in both Clara's and my names. It bore a legitimate bank logo, a real notary seal. But I had never signed that paper. The signature looked like mine, right down to the slanted T in Thomas. But something about it felt wrong. Too perfect. Too rehearsed. Clara would have never hidden something like that. And Marcus? He never mentioned it. I pulled out the fireproof box and retrieved a folder Elias had helped me build. Old tax forms, bank records, and scans of every document I'd collected before fleeing. Buried inside, I found 3 more forms, all with forged versions of my signature. A cold wave passed through me. Marcus hadn't just abandoned me. He'd been stealing from us for years. It explained everything. The arguments Clara and I had before she passed. The missing money. The unexplained debts. The vacations we canceled. The emergencies Marcus always seemed to have. The nice car he drove while I juggled bills. I didn't cry this time. I opened my laptop and started digging. For 3 days straight, I barely left my chair. I searched databases, pulled old emails, tracked down every financial correspondence Marcus had ever sent on my behalf. What I discovered was staggering. Marcus had taken out multiple loans in my name. He'd used my social security number. Clara's, too. Some of them had defaulted and been written off. Others were still active, quietly bleeding interest. But the worst? He had used an old LLC, one Clara and I had started back in the 80s for our catering side business, as collateral for a 6-figure credit line. That company was technically still registered. He used it 2 years after Clara died, and signed it using her name. That wasn't just deception. That was federal fraud. I printed everything and stored it in 2 locations, one physical, one digital. Because I knew Marcus, if he suspected I had this information, he wouldn't just try to find me. He'd come for me. Have you ever looked at someone you've loved your entire life and realized you never actually knew them? That was the feeling as I stared at those documents. Marcus, the boy I used to read bedtime stories to, who cried when he lost his first pet, who hugged me tightly the day Clara died, was gone. In his place stood a stranger, and a dangerous one at that. I called Elias again. "I have new information," I said. "Forged documents, loans, identity theft." "I believe you," he said calmly. "Do you want to press charges?" "Not yet," I said. "He needs to feel something first. Uncertainty, fear, like I did. Because I wasn't just hiding anymore. I was hunting." From that moment on, I turned my small Tennessee house into an evidence vault. Every document Marcus had touched, every false loan, every doctored form, I filed it all, labeled with dates and annotations. I recorded voice memos, not because I feared I'd forget, but because I wanted my voice to be the last thing anyone heard if anything happened to me. And then, I made a choice. I mailed a copy of the entire file, anonymously, to the Department of Justice. Not as a final blow. Not yet. But as insurance. If something ever happened to me, they'd know exactly where to look. Even so, I couldn't shake the paranoia. One afternoon, a car parked across the road for over an hour. The next day, a man knocked on the door claiming to be conducting a neighborhood survey. I didn't answer, just watched from behind the curtain, phone in hand, heart pounding. Still, I didn't run. I called Elias again. "We need to finalize everything," I said. "The trust, the will, everything locked down." He agreed. He created layers of legal protection, buried under a new name. If Marcus tried to claim assent, courts would bounce him out like a con man in a tuxedo. But as secure as the paperwork made me feel, the emotional weight was something else entirely. At night, I'd sit by the fire and think about Marcus as a boy, his scraped knees, his proud smile when he fixed his first flat tire, the nights he fell asleep on my chest watching baseball. I remembered the college years, his drifting calls, the strange silences, the slow, quiet withdrawal from me. How long had he been slipping away? Had I ignored it? Had I enabled it? Maybe that's the cruelest kind of betrayal, the one you watch unfold in slow motion, refusing to believe what your heart already knows. But I wasn't going to let him rewrite the ending of my story. This time, I held the pen. Then came the letter. Plain envelope, handwritten address, no return. The handwriting? I recognized it immediately. Marcus always wrote in quick, slanted letters, like he couldn't wait to be done. Inside, one sentence. "I know what you did, and this isn't over." I read it twice. Then I laughed. Not from humor, from recognition. That was Marcus to a fault. No apology, no remorse. Just a veiled threat. I added the letter to my growing folder of evidence. By now, I'd been gone nearly 3 weeks. Marcus had turned up on the news again, crying crocodile tears, begging for information. "My father has vanished. He's vulnerable. I just want him safe." It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so terrifying. Then the next move came. An official letter, stamped from the courthouse in Columbus. I signed for it, my hands already trembling. Marcus had filed a petition to declare me mentally incompetent. I couldn't breathe. Inside were statements from 2 people, a former neighbor and an old college friend of his, people who barely knew me. They claimed I had been erratic, paranoid, confused. He submitted audio clips, edited versions of voicemails I'd left when I was lonely, venting. Snippets, stitched together to paint me as unstable. He even included a letter from a psychiatrist I'd never met, citing concern over my mental health. Their plan? To freeze my accounts, seize the trust, drag me back. Elias came that night. He read every word, stone-faced. Finally, he said, "We've got work to do, but you, Thomas, need to stay calm, stay sharp. They're counting on panic." I nodded. No more running. No more hiding. I was going to fight. The following days were a storm of preparation. Elias brought in a seasoned litigator named Carla, sharp as glass and twice as unyielding. Together we compiled everything: phone records, bank transfers, my medical history, video logs, daily journals. We scheduled a psychiatric evaluation with a Dr. Elias trusted, Dr. Lena Cross, an independent certified expert. She came to the house, clipboard in hand, warm but professional. For 3 hours, she asked questions about my childhood, my career, my wife, and, finally, Marcus. I told her the truth, all of it. She didn't pity me. She listened. When she stood to leave, she placed a hand on mine and said, "You're the most lucid person I've seen all month." It was the first time I'd breathed easy in days. Still, the noise outside grew louder. The story leaked. The internet, which had once sympathized with the missing father, now split into camps. Was I unstable? Being manipulated? Was there money involved? Marcus knew how to feed a narrative. But I was done being silent. In the stillness of my little living room, I set up a tripod, hit record, and stared into the camera. My name is Thomas Reed. I am of sound mind, and I was betrayed by the one person I trusted most. No theatrics, no shouting. Just facts, because I knew the storm was coming, and this time, I wasn't going to be the one on trial. The courthouse in Columbus hadn't changed since the last time I'd been there years ago for a speeding ticket. Back then, I was a husband, a father, a believer in second chances. Now, I was the defendant. Elias had told me to dress with quiet strength. I wore a gray coat, dark slacks, and Clara's old watch, the one she gave me on our 25th anniversary. It ticked softly as I walked the halls. Marcus was already there, sitting in the front row, flanked by his lawyer, a tall man with a voice like a sales pitch and 2 white teeth. Marcus stood as I entered, flashing a concerned smile. A performance, polished and hollow. The judge, a man in his 60s with a deep frown line and tired eyes, began. In the matter of Thomas Reed's mental competency, the air seemed to thicken. Marcus's lawyer went first. He painted a vivid picture. A confused old man, erratic, emotional, possibly being exploited. He presented the psychiatrist's letter from the stranger who'd never met me, played the distorted voicemail clips. He made me sound like a man unraveling. I stayed still. Then Marcus took the stand. Your Honor, he said, voice shaking just the right amount. I love my father. I really do. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. But he's not himself. He's being manipulated. He's vulnerable. My jaw tightened. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly, walked to the front, folder in hand, and looked the judge in the eye. My name is Thomas Reed. I am 66 years old. I am not mentally impaired. I am not lost, and I am not being manipulated. I handed the judge Dr. Cross's report, signed, dated, and certified. It stated in no uncertain terms that I was of sound mind and emotionally stable. I saw Marcus's lawyer flinch. Then I pulled out a second folder. Call logs, transaction receipts, records of my departure, all showing deliberate, well-planned decisions. And one more thing. I also have something else, Your Honor, I said, tapping the third folder. But I won't be presenting it unless I must. That folder. The one with every forged loan, every false signature, every criminal act Marcus committed. My ace. I turned to the judge. My son left me in a care facility without warning, took my phone, my freedom, and now he wants to take my autonomy. Don't let him. The courtroom went still. Elias sat silently beside me, nodding once. The judge leaned back, thumbed through the files. I will reconvene in 2 weeks, he said. There's a lot to review. 2 weeks. Marcus turned to me as the hearing ended, tried to meet my eyes. I didn't flinch. He walked out with clenched fists. And me? I walked out with my back straight and my name intact. The war wasn't over, but for the first time I knew I could win it. Those 2 weeks were anything but quiet. Marcus wasted no time. By the end of the day, he had already arranged a new round of interviews. The local news ran another dramatic segment titled, "Missing Father Reappears. Son Fears He's Being Exploited." There he was on screen, eyes red, voice trembling. "I just want my dad safe," he said. "He's been through so much. He's not thinking clearly. I fear someone's influencing him." I watched from my living room, arms crossed, heart steeled. There was no one influencing me. There was only me, the man who had once wiped Marcus's tears, the man he now tried to erase. And that's when I realized silence wasn't enough. Defense wasn't enough. I had to go on offense. I called Elias, asked him to come over. When he arrived, I handed him a thick envelope, sealed and heavy. Inside, every financial crime I had documented, every loan, every forged document, every stolen dollar. "Send it," I said. "Not to the judge, to the Department of Justice. Anonymous." Elias flipped through the files, eyebrows furrowed. Then he nodded. "This'll make waves." But I wasn't done. That night, under a new alias, I made a large anonymous donation, $5 million, to a national nonprofit that fights elder financial abuse. No press, no name, just a wire transfer. Within a week, the organization launched a new campaign featuring a real case of financial betrayal and forced institutionalization. They didn't use names, but the timing, too perfect. The internet noticed. Posts began to swirl. Why would a father disappear and then be dragged back into court? Something about that son doesn't feel right. Let him speak for himself. Public opinion started to tilt. Then something I hadn't expected. A journalist from a major national paper contacted Elias. She wanted to hear my side, promised anonymity, no names, just truth. I agreed. We met at a small cafe 2 towns over. I wore a cap and sunglasses. She hit record, and I told her everything. The nursing home, the power of attorney, the forged documents, the silence, the plan. I didn't mention the lottery. That secret was still mine. When she asked why Marcus would do all of this, I kept it simple. He didn't want me cared for. He wanted me contained. The article dropped 2 days later. The silencing of Thomas R. It didn't name me, but anyone paying attention connected the dots. Now people were whispering about Marcus, about motive, about money. The pressure was mounting. Then, 2 days before our next court date, Elias got the call. It was from the Department of Justice. They'd received the anonymous file, and they were opening a case. Marcus didn't know it yet. While he played the role of the concerned son for cameras, I was setting his entire world on fire. The day of the second hearing arrived beneath a gray Tennessee sky and biting wind. But the real chill wasn't from the weather. It was in the courtroom air. Something had shifted. Marcus entered with his lawyer, but the swagger was gone. His posture a little more hunched, his suit a little tighter around the shoulders. He was cracking. They'd seen the article, the whispers, the shift in public mood. And now, they were rattled. I sat calmly, my folder in my lap, Elias beside me, stoic as ever. This time we spoke first. Elias stood. Your Honor, since our last session, we've submitted a full psychiatric evaluation, detailed financial records proving Mr. Reed's autonomy, and, importantly, located a public case file. He walked to the bench, handed the judge a document. Mr. Marcus Reed is currently under federal investigation for multiple financial crimes, including identity theft, wire fraud, and tax evasion. The courtroom froze. Marcus's lawyer jumped to his feet. Your Honor, these charges are irrelevant to the question of mental competency. The judge raised a hand. Sit down. Then came our biggest hammer. Dr. Lena Cross took the stand. Confident, clear, direct. Mr. Reed is not suffering from any form of cognitive impairment. He is not delusional. He is not unstable. He is rational, articulate, and entirely capable of managing his affairs. She leaned forward slightly. And he has been since the day I met him. I watched Marcus's hands, white-knuckled, gripping the table, his mask of concern disintegrating. Then Elias presented a timeline. It detailed exactly when Marcus had seized control of my accounts, how it lined up perfectly with major withdrawals from his failing company. Coincidence? Hardly. The judge reviewed everything in silence. Marcus was offered the chance to respond. He stood, voice trembling, less performance, more panic. My father. He's sick. He's not acting like himself. He must be under someone's influence. This isn't him. I stood, faced him. I am him. The room went still. I'm the man who stayed up with you when you had chickenpox, who sold tools to pay your tuition, who cooked dinner while you ignored me for months. I turned to the judge, and he left me in a home without a goodbye. Took my phone, my name, and now he wants to take my freedom. I paused, letting the silence stretch. Don't let him. The judge leaned forward, hands clasped, voice steady. Mr. Reed, based on the overwhelming evidence, your psychiatric clearance, and the inconsistencies in the petitioner's claims, I hereby dismiss this case. Your accounts are restored. Your autonomy is reaffirmed. This court recognizes you as mentally competent and independent. I didn't cry, but my knees wobbled slightly as I picked up my folder and turned to leave. Marcus didn't speak. He couldn't. His world had just imploded, and he knew it. But what he didn't know, while he spent months trying to have me declared unfit, I'd been building something far more powerful than a defense, a legacy. And I was just getting started. The phone rang just after midnight. Elias. It happened, he said. The DOJ made it official. Formal proceedings have begun. Marcus Reed is on the docket. I didn't respond right away. I just stared out the window, watching the wind dance through bare branches. Part of me had waited for this. But now that it had arrived, I didn't feel triumph. I felt inevitability. The next morning, the media exploded. Son of elder abuse victim under federal investigation. They didn't mention my name directly, but the dots were easy to connect. People remembered the interviews, the courthouse drama, the anonymous donation. Now the perfect son was unraveling. Journalists flooded Elias's inbox, desperate for my statement. But I stayed silent. For 2 days, I cooked breakfast, swept the porch, fed the birds. And then I sat down with a pen and wrote letters. Letters I never intended to send. To Clara, to Marcus, to myself. But I knew silence wasn't justice. It was time. I called the same journalist I'd spoken to weeks earlier, Riley James. "I'm ready," I told her. "This time, no aliases, no blurred photos, just truth." She asked if I was sure. I've never been more sure. The interview was scheduled for that Friday. National network, prime time, full segment, no PR team, no makeup, no handlers, just me, Thomas Reed, the man who had once been silenced. I wore a plain button-up, a soft gray sweater, and Clara's silver cufflinks. We sat in a quiet studio, the lights warm, the cameras still. Riley leaned in. "Thomas, the world knows the headlines, but what they don't know, what they haven't heard, is the why. Why now?" I looked straight into the lens. "Because this isn't just about me," I said. "It's about every parent who gave everything and got discarded. Every elder labeled a burden. I was almost one of them. But I'm not going to be quiet anymore." Then I told the story. The betrayal, the lies, the home, the escape, the lottery, the evidence, the court. Everything. Riley's eyes shimmered, but I didn't cry. I was done crying. That night, the interview aired. Millions watched. Messages flooded in. Letters, emails, voicemails from across the country. People who had been ignored, forgotten, silenced. I wasn't just Thomas Reed anymore. I was a mirror. And Marcus, he didn't give any public statement. But sources close to him said he was unraveling. His clients vanished. His accounts frozen. His wife filed for divorce. He was alone. But I didn't celebrate. Because surviving betrayal doesn't leave you whole. It leaves you wiser, sharper. But something soft dies inside you. The blind faith, the childlike hope. I didn't mourn it. I buried it. And on a quiet Saturday, I walked into town for the first time since the interview. People recognized me, not with whispers, but with nods, with smiles. A woman touched my arm. "You gave my mother the courage to leave." A pharmacy clerk slipped a note into my prescription bag. "My grandfather says thank you. I never sought this spotlight, but it found me, like morning sun after a storm." That afternoon, Elias stopped by. "They offered him a deal," he said. "How long?" 10 years if he pleads guilty. Otherwise, trial. And he still thinks he can outsmart the system." I shook my head. "He's been pretending his whole life." Then Elias asked, "Has he tried to contact you?" I paused. "Not directly," I said. "But I had received something. A photograph. Slipped under my door one evening. It was from my 60th birthday. I was laughing, cake on my nose. Marcus stood beside me, holding the knife. On the back, scrawled in his hand, "You always believed in me." I'm sorry that wasn't enough. I sat with that photo for hours, not angry, not sad. Just remembering. The boy who asked for bedtime stories. The teen who crashed my car and sobbed in my arms. The man who hugged me when Clara passed. They were all part of him, and I had loved them all. But love without truth? That isn't love. That night, I burned the photo in the fireplace, not out of hatred, out of release. I didn't need a picture to remember. I needed peace. And I was almost there. The morning I returned to Crescent Valley, the sky hung low, overcast and silent, the way some memories rest heavy in your chest. I stood in the parking lot for a while, staring at the building where my story had nearly ended. The place Marcus had left me to rot, like expired groceries. The automatic doors slid open, and out stepped Jasmine. She gasped. "Mr. Reed?" I smiled. "It's me." She ran toward me and we hugged, not out of politeness, but like two people who had seen the edge of the cliff and survived. Inside, everything looked different. The floors gleamed. The lights were warm. The common room had new books, a new TV, and the smell of real coffee. "I heard what you did," Jasmine said, leading me down the hallway. "The donations, the interviews. You changed things." "No," I said. "I just stopped letting people define me." We walked together. I peeked into my old room, now a reading lounge. The staff nodded as I passed. Some residents recognized me. Others just smiled, sensing something had shifted. I gave a speech that afternoon in the new activities room. Folding chairs were set up. Someone had made cookies. Jasmine introduced me like I was a celebrity. I waved it off. "I'm not here because I'm rich," I began, "and not because I was wronged." I paused. "I'm here because I was silenced, and I know how many of you still feel that way." Eyes filled with tears. "I want you to hear something I wish someone had told me. You are not a burden. You are not forgotten. And you are not finished." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then steady, then loud. That day I walked out of Crescent Valley not as a victim, but as a man restored. When I returned home, I finalized the trust. The Reed Project would go national, offering legal aid and financial protection for vulnerable seniors. Real lawyers. Real funding. Real help. As for Marcus, he took the deal, 10 years. He tried sending another letter. I returned it, unopened. That chapter was closed. In the final days of the year, I wrote letters to everyone who helped me. Elias, Jasmine, Dr. Cross. I thanked them. Not for saving me, but for standing beside me while I saved myself. Then, on the first snow of January, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I wrote a letter to myself. Just one page. I sat by the fireplace, cat curled at my feet, and read it aloud. "Dear Thomas, you weren't crazy. You weren't weak. You weren't too trusting. You were a man who loved deeply. And when they tried to erase you, you picked up the pen and wrote the ending yourself. I am so proud of you. With love, yourself." I folded it, placed it in a wooden box on the mantel. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need recognition. I had something better. Freedom. And for the first time in my life, I was completely, truly, and finally free.